All right, we're back. We have a budget hearing for DGS. Mr. Propert is our analyst. Welcome.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. My name is David Propert, and I'm here from the Department of Legislative Services to go over the Department of General Services, or DGS, their fiscal 2026 budget. It increases by $32.1 million, or 18.3%, to $207.3 million. Moving to page 4 of the analysis, the Office of State Procurement serves as the control agency for commodities, facilities maintenance, and construction. This office has an objective to complete 80% of large procurements, which are defined as procurements valued greater than $100,000 within 90 days. As shown in Exhibit 1 on page 5, there have been no managing for results data for the percentage of large procurements completed within 90 days since fiscal 21. It remains unavailable because of data integrity issues related to the transition from the Financial Management Information System to the eMaryland Marketplace Advantage, or EMMA, procurement system. These data integrity issues should be reconciled when EMMA is complete. However, delays in project development have been ongoing for several years. Appendix 2 provides more information on the EMMA major IT project. DGS has previously reported that it is more effective to combine procurements that have a common commodity or service into larger procurements. Therefore, DGS has a goal to reduce the total number of procurements through strategic sourcing. Despite this goal, new procurements increased substantially from fiscal 23 to 24, rising by 264%. Additionally, the percentage of competitive services procurements valued over $50,000 with 2 or more bids decreased from 95% in fiscal 23 to 68% in fiscal 24. DGS should comment on why the number of new procurements increased substantially and why competitive services procurements are generally receiving fewer bids. On December 18th, 2024, the governor signed an executive order directing the Office of State Procurement to develop and implement a centralized statewide contract management process in coordination with the Maryland Department of Transportation, Department of Information Technology, in addition to other operational changes to streamline and centralize the procurement process. DGS should comment on the implementation timeline for these changes and if any funding is included for this purpose in the fiscal 26 allowance. Moving to Exhibit 2 on page 6, the state's Minority Business Enterprise, or MBE, program is meant to increase procurement opportunities for minority and women-owned businesses with the goal that 29% of prime and subcontract awards go to MBE qualified businesses. In fiscal 24, DGS awarded $95.2 million in contracts to MBE prime contractors and $49.7 million to MBE subcontractors, which achieved a participation rate of 21.4%, which is the highest level reached since fiscal 2015. On to page 7, DGS contracts with a vendor to maintain a publicly accessible data dashboard related to state agency energy and utility usage. While the information contained in the dashboard provides a means of understanding costs on an aggregate statewide scale, the data has not been complete because the percentage of state facilities with complete data in the database has stagnated at approximately 60% since fiscal 22. In an attempt to get more complete data, DGS started a utility bill centralization pilot program in calendar 2022 for DGS facilities. After seeing successful results, DGS decided in fiscal 23 that it would begin enrolling other state agencies in the program as well. However, the percentage of statewide facilities with complete data in the state energy database only increased from 59.8% in fiscal 23 to 60.3% in fiscal 24. DGS should comment on the status of expanding the utility bill centralization program to other agencies and getting complete information from additional state agencies uploaded to the state energy database. Exhibit 3 on page 8 shows energy spending from fiscal 22 to fiscal 25 year to date for state agencies that have data included in the state energy database. From fiscal 22 to 23, energy costs increased by 16.3%, but from fiscal 23 to 24, energy costs decreased by 8.2%. Exhibit 4 on page 9 lists the utility costs for state agencies that provide information to the state energy database. In calendar 2024, a total of $248.6 million was spent, with almost 2/3 being spent on electricity. Natural gas and water make up the next largest shares at 13% and 7% respectively, while diesel fuel, steam, and other sources make up the final 16%. DGS has a goal of reducing energy consumption and helping the state become more energy efficient. and the agency contracts with a private vendor that audits facilities and recommends improvements to reduce energy consumption. For example, improvements include replacing aging equipment with energy-saving equipment or enhancing insulation. If the savings are greater than the cost of the improvements, the state may enter into a contract with the vendor to implement the recommended improvements. Exhibit 5 on page 10 shows that the state had 19 active energy performance contracts with estimated savings of $20.6 million in fiscal '24. In its fiscal 2023 annual report, DGS stated that it had undertaken a project of light-emitting diode, or LED, lighting installations in state buildings. DGS estimated that these replacements should result in annual cost savings of approximately $1 million due to lower electricity use. DGS should discuss the ongoing costs and savings from this project to date. In fiscal '25, the Board of Public Works approved 2 cost containment measures for DGS, totaling about $727,000 of general funds. On page 11, the fiscal '26 allowance includes 4 proposed efficiency appropriations totaling about $4.9 million. Exhibit 6 on page 12 shows how DGS's $207.3 million allowance is distributed. Facilities operations, maintenance, planning, and security combine to account for 68% of the budget. The Business Enterprise Administration comprises 17%, procurement accounts for 8%, and the final 7% supports administrative costs and real estate management. Exhibit 7 on page 13 outlines major changes driving the net increase of $32.1 million from the working appropriation to the allowance. There's an increase of $15 million in PAYGO capital funding for Trade Point Atlantic's container terminal project in the Port of Baltimore that has been placed in DGS's operating budget. Additionally, there is $10 million of capital funding to support a new headquarters in College Park for the IonQ quantum computing company that has been placed in DGS's operating budget. In DGS and the Board of Public Works capital budget analysis, DLS recommends a supplemental budget to move this $15 million for Trade Point and $10 million for IonQ from the operating to the capital budget. Other increases include $7 million for salaries and associated fringe benefits and $340,000 of personnel costs for 4 contractual conversions and 1 new position. Page 15 contains DGS's personnel data. The allowance includes 4 contractual conversions and 1 new position. Among the 80.5 regular positions that were vacant as of December 31st, 2024, 9 have been vacant for more than 1 year. Additionally, a total of 24 new positions created in fiscal '25 were still vacant as of December 31st, 2024. Of these positions, 12 are in the Office of State Procurement and 10 are in the Office of Facilities Security. DLS recommends deleting funds for 12 new positions in the Office of State Procurement that were added in fiscal '25 and remain unfilled. Exhibit 8 on page 16 shows the vacancy rate for regular positions from January 2017 to January 2025. The addition of 24 new positions at the start of fiscal '25 drives some of this growth in vacancies. However, excluding the vacant new positions, DGS still reported a high vacancy rate of 8% as of December 31st, 2024. DLS recommends adopting committee narrative requesting a report from DGS on the status of its vacancies. On to page 17, the litigation stemming from the cancellation of the public-private partnership to redevelop State Center has concluded. On November 20th, 2024, the Board of Public Works approved a settlement of $58.5 million payable to the redevelopment contractor. Of this payment, 80%, or about $47 million, will consist of general funds, and the remaining 20%, or approximately $12 million, will be paid with special funds from the Transportation Trust Fund. Due to the cancellation of State Center's redevelopment, agencies that occupied the complex have been relocating to office space within Baltimore City's Central Business District. Committee narrative in the 2024 Joint Chairman's Report requested 2 reports on the status of State Center relocation, and Exhibit 9 on page 18 displays the status of each agency as of January 17th, 2025, which came from a draft report that DGS provided to DLS. 5 of 12 agencies have completed their move to a new office space, 2 more are estimated to finish relocating in calendar 2025, and the remaining agencies plan to relocate in calendar 2026. DGS should provide a status update on whether the Maryland Department of Aging has relocated by now as planned. DGS previously had plans to relocate its offices in State Center to 2100 Guilford Avenue in Baltimore City, which was the former location of the Department of Public Safety and Correctional Services, Division of Parole and Probation. However, as renovation plans progressed, design modifications were found to be necessary and came with greater costs. In response to committee narrative in the 2023 Joint Chairman's Report, DGS reported in January 2024 that it had decided to not move forward with renovation and relocation to 2100 Guilford Avenue. The agency stated that it would issue a request for information to determine alternative uses of the property, but will continue to manage maintenance and security of the site. DGS recently reported that it will relocate to 1 South Street in Baltimore City by April 2026. DGS should comment on any updated plans for the 2100 Guilford Avenue property. Continuing down page 19, the fiscal 22 budget appropriated $50 million in the dedicated purpose account to cover moving expenses, rent, furniture, and other costs for agencies leaving State Center. The fiscal 25 budget added a $30 million deficiency to the dedicated purpose account for fiscal 24. DGS also anticipates that $6.9 million will be reverted to the dedicated purpose account at fiscal 25 closeout from the Department of Labor due to lower furniture costs than expected. There is a provision in the Budget Reconciliation and Financing Act of 2025 that would allow the governor to transfer $20 million from the dedicated purpose account set aside in fiscal 25 for the relocation of agencies from State Center to the general fund. After accounting for all of these additions, contingent reductions, and expenditures listed, there will be an estimated $29.3 million in the dedicated purpose account at the end of fiscal 25. As shown in Exhibit 10 on page 20, DGS provided a list of funding requests by each agency for relocation costs. The requests total about $115 million, but DGS notes only about $96 million, or 83%, were eligible for reimbursement from the dedicated purpose account. DGS should comment on how much funding from the dedicated purpose account has been spent in fiscal 25 year to date and how much currently remains in it. DGS should also comment on what sources of funds will be used to cover the requested expenses that exceed the remaining dedicated purpose account appropriation. DLS recommends adding budget bill language restricting funds pending the submission of a report on the status of State Center relocations and moving costs. Moving to page 21, DGS's critical maintenance of state facilities is funded through the operating budget, and projects usually cost less than $200,000. DGS evaluates and prioritizes maintenance projects into 5 categories based on urgency, with number 1 being the highest priority and number 5 being the lowest. As of January 2025, there are 195 projects in the critical maintenance backlog, which is a decrease of 64 projects compared to the 259 reported in January of 2024. Exhibit 11 on page 22 shows the cost of critical maintenance projects in DGS's backlog. There is an overall decrease of 13.8%, or $3.8 million in January 2025 compared to January 2024. In October 2024, DGS launched a new grants management system called Submittable to improve its management and oversight of miscellaneous capital grants authorized each session by the General Assembly. At any one time, DGS administers roughly 4,000 active grants, and prior to implementation of the new system, the process was almost entirely paper-driven and lacked appropriate procedures and protocols to ensure the effective and timely administration of grants from initial application intake through reimbursement, which can span several years. While the new system should be viewed as an improvement to the process, its implementation lacks sufficient onboarding for grantees and members of the General Assembly on how to access and use the system. As a result, DLS is fielding an increasing number of complaints from grantees and legislators concerning system access and the receipt of timely grant status information for projects. This has forced DLS to act as an intermediary to field and address grantee and member inquiries. DGS has advised that it recognizes the need to make refinements to Submittable, specifically to improve member access, and those refinements are under development. DGS should brief the committee on the essential features of the new grants management system and the steps the agency has taken to ensure that the responsible party of record on each of the approximately 4,000 active grants is sufficiently educated and assisted when using Submittable. DGS should also outline plans for the development of reports that provide key status updates and contact information for DGS staff who can answer questions from legislative staff and other system users. And with that, Mr. Chair, I conclude my presentation.
Well, thank you for the excellent presentation and analysis. Questions for the analyst? Delegate Metzger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, sir, for the great analysis. Just to be sure in my mind, you said that the Trade Point Atlantic would be moved from to operating to capital budget?
Yes, so currently there's a deficiency in the capital budget of $15 million for Trade Point, but there also is $15 million in PAYGO funding that is currently budgeted under an operating budget code for DGS, and DLS is recommending that we just rebudget that into a capital budget code.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, Mr. Secretary, welcome. It's great to see you. You may notice that you're not in front of the subcommittee today. You're in front of the full committee. And that's because I thought it was important for the full committee to hear, in particular, your answer to the entire analysis, but in particular, your answer to this lag time and bureaucracy we're seeing with getting these grants out. Probably every member of the Appropriations Committee has heard from some organization or another at this point about the bureaucracy and lag time. Sure. And before that snowballs, we wanted to give you a chance to address it here to the full committee. So we'd like you to answer the entire analysis, but please pay particular attention to that question if you could. With that, welcome.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman, Mr. Vice Chairman, esteemed members of the committee. I really appreciate you having us here today. And to be able to present our fiscal year 2026 operating budget. And we really appreciate your support and commitment to ensuring efficiencies and effectiveness of state government operations. I wanted to begin by thanking Governor Moore, Lieutenant Governor Miller, and DBM for their support of our 26 operating budget. I will also like to extend our gratitude to David Propert of the Maryland Department of Legislative Services for his thorough analysis of our budget request. DGS serves as the backbone of state government through its expertise in real estate, construction, procurement, and the management and security of state facilities across the state. Throughout the past year, DGS has remained steadfast in its mission to support all three branches of state government, including our state agency partners, and advance their initiatives. Our offices, including the Office of Facilities Management, State Procurement, Design, Construction, and Energy, Real Estate, External Affairs, Business Enterprise Administration, and the Maryland Capitol Police, continue to provide vital services that impact every corner of the state. As DGS, we take pride in our role as stewards of Maryland resources and ensuring that the agency functions efficiently in a secure and well-maintained environment. And we look forward to working with you to continue advancing these efforts and appreciate your support in our fiscal year 26 operating budget request. There were 3 budget recommendations identified in the DLS analysis. I'll go through all 3 now. The first one was adding language restricting funds pending the submission of a report on state center relocations. DGS concurs with this recommendation. The second was to adopt committee narrative requesting a report on the status of vacancies and hiring. DGS also concurs with that recommendation. And third and finally, it was to delete funding for 12 new Office of State Procurement positions added in the fiscal year 25 budget that remained vacant as of December 31st of 2024. DGS respectfully disagrees with this recommendation. These 12 positions within OSP are critically needed as part of the Moore-Miller administration's efforts to reform and streamline procurement operations across the state. DGS does acknowledge that at the end of last calendar year, these positions were technically vacant. But we were working throughout the year, last fiscal year, the end of the calendar year, to take a look at the actual needs across the Office of State Procurement, resulting in a need to make changes to several position descriptions to update them. So we worked through that process. It's also important to note that procurement-related positions, in particular procurement officer positions, are traditionally difficult to fill. In the market, especially when it comes to Maryland State Procurement. There's a limited number of people that are trained in Maryland State Procurement, and it tends to be an arms race between agencies just, taking each other's positions. So it's always a challenge associated with that as well. So it's important to note that regarding these 12 positions, as of today, 7 of the 12 positions are already filled. And 2 procurement officer vacancies just remain unfilled only because they were the 2 candidates that were offered positions declined them in January. We're continuing to interview for those 2 particular positions that we hope to make offers very soon to fill those very quickly. The remaining 3 positions are actively in the recruitment process and should be filled fairly soon. OSP is wrapping up the interview process for 2 of the 3 remaining positions currently as we speak, so that should be done fairly quickly. I'll go through our discussion points, Mr. Chairman, and focus on the grant system at the end. We were asked to comment on why new procurements had increased substantially and why competitive services procurements are generally receiving fewer bids. So there's 3 main reasons why we were seeing increased number of procurements. Number 1, we changed our reporting structure, so we were capturing more procurements and having more accurate data. The second is the second reason is procurements tend to fluctuate. They ebb and flow over years. There's no set number of procurements that happen each year. So as certain contracts are ending In certain years, there may be an increased number of renewals or contract modifications or new procurements to replace old procurements. And the third is, not just while consolidating contracts makes a lot of sense operationally, there are some strategic initiatives that we do end up doing where we do end up splitting procurements to make them smaller procurements intentionally. And the reason for that is to get increased small minority women-owned businesses to engage in these smaller procurements where they would not be able to participate in these large-scale statewide procurements. We were also asked to comment on implementation timeline for the executive order, in particular for contract management procurement. The Office of State Procurement has made substantial progress when it comes to the executive order that was assigned in December, in which directs the centralization of contract management. We're working very closely with MDOT and with DoIT to stand up a newly created, first ever contract management training certification program. And contract management in general has been, I would say, the Achilles heel of state government for many, many years. You'd see a lot of contracts being overrun, retroactives, emergency procurements that are needed because these contracts are not properly managed. That's one of the things we're focusing on right now to set that up, and we believe that will be done in June of this year. So end of this fiscal year, we're looking to stand up that training program through the Maryland Procurement Academy. And the important thing there too is it's not just for procurement-related people or procurement officers, it's for anyone that are in programs that are doing contract management. We were also asked to comment on our expansion of the utility bill centralization program. DGS had got off to a great start with the UBC utility bill centralization program. We are working with vendors to have our bills come in directly to our energy provider that's monitoring our energy, and then from there go to our general accounting department. So we're working through that right now. There's still several vendors within DGS working through the pilot program. As we clear that up and get that addressed, we'll be working with DBM and other partner agencies to look at resources to bring on that capability at other agencies. DGS was also asked to comment on our ongoing costs and savings from our LED lighting projects across the state. Since fiscal year 2020, DGS has spent over $13 million in LED lighting projects, and we've got a breakdown of what that looks like here. So over 40,500 LED lighting fixtures either have been installed, are under construction, or are under contract to be installed by the end of fiscal year 25. And there are 37 projects located at 6 agencies, totaling more than 3.4 million square feet. Annual cost avoidance, including maintenance savings, is estimated right around $1.6 million when everything is done. And actual annual energy savings also include 8.5 million kilowatt hours being saved, as well as around 3,500 tons of greenhouse gas emissions being avoided into the environment. The estimated simple payback period for the LED lighting initiatives is approximately 8 years. Estimated savings to date for our lighting fixtures installations that have already been completed from fiscal year 2020 through fiscal year 23 are just over $2 million. DGS was asked to provide an status update on the Maryland Department of Aging relocation. The Maryland Department of Aging successfully relocated from State Center into new commercial office lease, commercial space in the Baltimore City Central Business District in February of 2025. The Department of Disability Telephone Relay Unit is also targeted for relocation in July of 25 as well. The remaining state agencies that are on site, and we've got a table here for you in page 8 of our analysis or our response, should be completed by the end of calendar year 2026. DGS was also asked to comment on how much funding for the DPA has been spent in fiscal year 25, how many funds remain in the DPA, and how will they be used going forward to address the future relocations. We've got a table here in page 9 of our analysis, which outlines the initial appropriation, subsequent appropriations to the dedicated purpose account, and projected drawdowns on that as well. We'll be continuing to work with DBM when it comes to funding for the additional relocations that will be occurring through the end of calendar year 2026. And DGS should comment also on updated plans for the 2100 Guilford Avenue property. DGS is working very closely with Maryland Department of Planning as well as Department of Housing and Community Development for the disposition of the 2100 Guilford Avenue property. For those who are not familiar, DGS originally had planned to renovate that property and transfer DGS headquarters to there. After the new administration took over, under the Moore Miller administration, we did another space assessment and determined that the space would not meet the agency's needs. So we canceled that project and was coordinating on a disposition of the property. This does meet the new requirements for affordable housing under the new law that was recently passed. We're working very closely with DHCD on that, and we've declared the property surplus as of July 3rd of 2024, and we've developed an interagency work group with Maryland Department of Planning, DHCD, and the Attorney General's office to coordinate the issuance of an RFP for the disposition of the property for affordable housing, and we're working through that process right now. And then once we go through that process, we're probably looking at about 9 to 12 months before we would actually be going to the Board of Public Works for any type of agreement or disposition on it. With regard to the capital grants program, thank you, Mr. Chair, for being able to chime in here on that. The prior grant system, when I first walked into office, was quite frankly a mess. It was an extremely manual process. Everything was done through emails, through spreadsheets, through shared email boxes. All coordination, including the passage of forms through the passage of signatures, was all done via email. The grants unit was receiving somewhere in the neighborhood of around upwards of 7,000 emails per month. Now, the vast majority of those emails were just asking, hey, where's my grant? What's the current status of my grant? And a lot of it was, there was not a lot of education out there on the grant process and how grants are issued. A lot of grantees were reaching out saying, hey, it's July the 1st, how come the money's not in my account? They didn't understand there was a process to go through. So we've released a new grant management system in October of 2024. It's a cloud-based system. It allows for centralized tracking of communications, and grantees can, for the first time ever, log into a system and see the current status of their grant. They can upload documents. They can see what's needed from them, whether the ball's in their court. They can see whether they're waiting on a legal review or Board of Public Works approval, or what steps are needed for the grant agreement to be completed. So all that is brand new, never been done before. And all our workflows have been updated as well to reflect that. Right now, we're going through some growing pains, to be quite frank, when it comes to the new system. We moved very quickly to implement the new system to get it up and running off the ground. And that way, we would start to move away from very quickly all these email correspondence back and forth. A lot of that we're getting lost in the mix of emails. Employees would leave, and forms and correspondence will be stuck in their emails that we'd have to parse through thousands of emails to move a procurement, to move a grant forward. It would often take sometimes, upwards of a couple of years to get a grant moving, just because it was such a manual process. So I absolutely recognize the issues, the growing pains we've addressed through that we've been experiencing recently with the implementation of the new system. I am personally looking into these issues right now and taking a very much hands-on approach to that. And I've got a multi-pronged approach here to address these issues I'd like to go through with you, if I may. So the first thing that I'm doing is relocating the capital grants program out of its current location. I just recently hired a chief operating officer. I'll be relocating the entire capital grants unit underneath the chief operating officer, who reports directly to me, for very close supervision. We're also revamping customer service across the capital grants program, and I'll get into the details there. We are creating new capital grants coordinator positions. Traditionally, what's happened is we've had grant administrators doing everything: status updates, phone calls, email correspondence, and at the same time moving grants through the process of Board of Public Works approval and for distribution. Now we're separating that out. Grant administrators will focus directly on getting grants through the process to be awarded, to be distributed quickly. Now we're also creating grant coordinators. Their jobs is just customer service, phone calls, emails, coordination with the grantees, coordination with elected officials to be able to get that through. So we've brought on one, we're bringing on additional grant coordinators as well. And we're actually doubling the number of grant administrators that we have. Right now, we currently have 4 grant administrators. We'll be doubling that to at least 8, if not 9 grant administrators that will be handling all of these types of grants and make sure they go through effectively. And make sure they can focus on the moving parts of moving grants through the process and coordinating with our grantees. I'm also surging resources, identifying resources across the agency that can be repurposed and moved into this capital grant program to be able to effectually do this. We're also doing additional customer service training as well to be able to effectuate proper customer service across the board for our grantees. We're also going to be updating our expectations and appropriate level of customer service. I personally am not happy with it, and that is changing as of today. We are working very closely to update our response times to make sure that we've got adequate coordination, not just with elected officials and their staffs, but with the grantees. We are a state agency. We provide services to the public. As such, we should be doing that effectively and efficiently, and treating others like we would ourselves like to be treated if we were reaching out for governmental related services. We're also updating our website as well, making it more customer service focused, having options for contacting our office, phone numbers, email addresses, places where you can contact. We're also having a better user experience. While we've updated our, we've implemented a brand new system, I believe we can do better in being able to train individuals, whether it's grantees, to be able to access our systems. So I know not everyone's very computer literate, so we're doing a few things there. We're updating and putting onto our website small snippet videos, short videos that will show different processes, how to create a login, how to do a general inquiry, how to activate your grant. And then we'll be moving on to additional short videos on how to go through the grant process. So it's very user-friendly and it's easy for the grantees, regardless of your computer literacy, to be able to go through and access and utilize the system. We're also doing additional coordination at the capital grant level in the capital grant program to ensure that we have the adequate level of customer service. And what I mean by that is we're not going to be telling people just go and fill out a form online or go and log into a system. We'll be typing those messages in for the grantees, fielding phone calls, responding back appropriately, and making sure that we are providing the adequate level of customer service. We'll also be revamping our Office of External Affairs within DGS to have better coordination with legislators, with elected officials across the state and with their staff, so they have an avenue and a conduit on the political end to be able to reach out to get adequate customer service. But at the same time, on the other ends, the other issues that I've mentioned, when it comes to the grantees, making sure that the grantees and their staff have an adequate avenue to get the proper customer service that they need, as well as what they deserve from the Department of General Services. So we absolutely recognize that there's some growing pains with this new system. The change management that would be engaged associated with this probably was not done as efficiently, but we were able to stand the system up. I just want to caveat that we were able to stand the system up in a very, very short period of time, which we are very proud of, but at a very low cost. And we give really some great functionality to grantees that they've never had before and be able to log in and see the status of the grant. But I think there's absolutely tons of room for improvement on the customer service side and responsiveness. And I've outlined this plan here to be able to go through and make sure that we have the right resources in place to be able to effectuate the proper responses. And I'm personally overseeing this along with my chief operating officer to make sure that we do this in a proper manner. And our aggressive response times for customer service will be properly resourced, let's just say, so we can make sure that we're effectuating proper customer service across the board to everyone.
Thank you. Thank you for the thorough response to the analysis. I do think your grantee response was thorough, and we're glad to hear of the myriad of changes that you're proposing. And on their face, they sound robust, and we hope over the next year they'll bear fruit. We'll be watching. Questions for the Secretary? Delegate Solomon.
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Excuse me, Mr. Secretary, it's nice to see you again and your whole team. My question's probably not going to be a huge surprise based on the conversations we've had excuse me, in the committee, and I know with some of our colleagues in the Senate, just in particular on the EMA procurement piece. So I know there's been some cost overruns there that sort of, I know we've got a lot going on with DO-IT and statewide procurement with our IT pieces, but there was some comment in the appendices here about some policy issues that were concerns for DLS over the EMA procurement. I was wondering if you could talk about some of the policy changes you may have implemented so that we don't have issues like that again.
No, I really appreciate that, Doug. Thank you for the question. Yeah, so when I walked into office, we had an ML platform, e-procurement platform that started to be implemented in 2019, had some stumbles and challenges associated with that. So we are working, what I did was I looped in the Department of Information Technology, working very closely with DoIT to try and to come up with a strategy to be able to address a lot of the challenges that we face in the current system, but also to be able to implement additional measures as well. So we're looking at a multi-pronged approach to address the challenges that we have here. Certainly, with all IT systems, there are challenges. There can be challenges with implementation. So associated with that, we want to make sure we're able to implement a lot of the features that we're looking to implement. And part of that reason is the executive order that was recently issued, the Procurement Reform Act, the governor's initiative to reform procurement across state government. All of those are tied into not just I see it as sort of three legs of a stool. You've got the executive order, you've got the Procurement Reform Act, and you've got a technology solution to be able to help effectuate a lot of these efficiencies across state government. So I think we're working very, very closely with the Department of Information Technology to take a close look at not just the next steps moving forward, but to make sure we're doing it in a very methodical and responsible manner, making sure that any projected costs are vetted thoroughly through the Department of General Services, but the Department of Information Technology, and make sure we've got a plan going forward where we've got tight costs that will not be just as an example based on time and material, where as you're aware, delegate, you can just start to run up on these type of IT projects where there's milestones, there's deliverables, there is capabilities here where we will pay vendors when we have adequate, an adequate milestone or deliverable has been hit. So working very closely with the Department of Information Technology to make sure that we move this forward in a way that's responsible and takes into account the issues that have already been identified.
So just to quickly follow up on that, it mentions that there were, and I know this has been talked about in some of the audit reports, there were some inadequate things done by the vendor. Is there any hope of recouping some of the previous payments to the vendors for work that maybe wasn't delivered appropriately?
So Doug, that's a phenomenal question. Any type of issues that arise like this, we definitely loop in the Office of the Attorney General for any type of initiative. I'm a big fan that we, in any aspect, whether it's construction or anything else, if something goes wrong, we should be holding vendors accountable. So yes, we'll be working very closely with the Office of the Attorney General to address it and see that. The one thing I did neglect to mention as well is DGS just recently hired a CIO as well to help oversee the technical implementation of the new the completion of the implementation of the platform. And this is something that has not happened in a long, long time. DGS is not a CIO in many, many years. So for the first time,
Since 2014.
2014 at least, if not earlier. So it's been many years, and we actually had a tough time getting a CIO in recently. So we got one in on board now, and that individual will be seeing the technical expertise that oversight that. So I think having that technical expertise in-house will definitely help us manage this project going forward.
Great, thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Appreciate your answers. When you was giving us your testimony, one of the things I realized that we talked about all the upgrades and the technology and the stuff that you provided and put together. What I didn't hear was the timeline from start to finish when something is actually submitted. So I think that would help with the process as well. So do you all have a timeline when something is started and then when it should be completed through the new system?
Yeah, absolutely, Delegate. We actually have some so I'll back up a little bit. We absolutely do. We set up some service level agreements to sort of hold ourselves accountable when it comes to the new system. And once people get into the new system and they log in and they're going through the process, we've got service level agreements that sort of map out and key performance indicators, which map out timelines for completion, which are a lot more aggressive and a lot faster than previous. I think in the change management model, the issues that we are experiencing in these growing pains is getting everyone acclimated and into the new system, and that's part of the challenge here. You've got everyone that's used to doing everything through phone calls and emails, and now we're switching everyone over to, and there's technology barriers there, so we're working through that process. But Delegate, to your question, we do have those processes mapped out. We're happy to share some of those with you, so you can sort of see those timelines that we have. Once folks are into the system and able to get through it, we're able to map out, and that's the beauties of the system. Every correspondence, every interaction with a grantee or their staff is captured in there. So we see everything, and it's there versus being buried in a chain of emails, 10,000 deep. So we have that, and we'll be continuing to work through that. As we work through these growing pains and these customer service related challenges, we definitely see those improving. One of the major things is that the intake forms traditionally, which traditionally took many months, is now being done at a maximum of 30 days. So we're definitely expediting that, but we're getting to the point where we can certainly expedite everything as it goes through.
So definitely look forward to seeing that, because I think that will help you all, but it also will help the public as well, so then they will know, hey, if I submit this, I should have if I go through the process correctly, I should get a response back within 180 days or within 6 months, whatever that time period is. I think it'd be important, and then also it keeps us accountable as well. Yes. To finish the process. Appreciate that.
Yes, thank you, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. If I may, Mr. Chairman, I have a few questions to ask the Secretary. Good afternoon. Thank you so much for your agency and helping our constituents out with regards to these grants. Since the time that the grants new system was rolled out in the fall, submissible, has there been any effect on the number of active grants that are out there? Specifically, have we seen any change in the decrease or increase in the numbers with regard to the grants?
When you, Mr. Vice Chair, do you mean the number of grants being activated or put through the process?
Yes, sir, the active grants, the amount of active grants that are out there.
Got it. Yeah. Okay. So a couple things there, Mr. Vice Chair. Great question. So we've got as the analysis indicated, we've got over 4,000 actual grants that are out there, meaning that have been approved. As we implemented our new system, part of the process is activating your grant in our system to be able to move through the process. Right now, about half of the grants, maybe a little less than half of the grants, the grantees have engaged with us. They have created a login and they've activated their grant, and they're actively working with us with the grants to move those through the process. And then obviously there are some older grants we're working with as well, but we're part of our next steps and part of my next strategy will be to be more engaged and being more proactive to engage with a lot of these grantees that are not yet coming out and trying to get their grants activated. And what I mean by that, Mr. Vice Chair, is a lot of times grantees are awarded grants and they may not realize it till the grants expire or are close to expiring because there's changes in leadership or other changes that happen in organizations. So I know just at the Board of Public Works, just 2 days ago, there was at least 3 that we were extending for another year. I know the comptroller made a comment that, grantees should be engaging. They've got 7 years to engage and make sure they encumber their funding. And that's something we'll be engaging with as well, to making sure that we are actively pursuing and coordinating to be proactive, to engage with a lot of these grantees to make sure they know that they have a grant out here, number one, and they know that the process they should be coming to be able to effectually go through all the operational requirements to be able to distribute the grant.
Great. And then do we have an average age of how old these grants are that are out there, as far as how many years these grants have been active?
We can certainly get that for you, Mr. Vice Chair, a listing of ones of their age.
Thank you. And then with regards to the aggregate amount, do we know how much is out there with these 4,000 grants that are out there? How much has been approved?
Funding-wise?
Yes, sir.
Yes, sir, we do. We can certainly get that to you as well.
Okay, do we have any idea right now?
I don't know the full magnitude of it. I don't want to quote a number that might be off.
Okay.
Actually, on our website, we have listed by year, every single year, all the grants are approved by year. We're happy to compile that information and send it over to you.
Okay, Mr. Chairman, if I may, last question. Do we have a plan as far as a goal? Does the agency have a goal to get this backlog down with the 4,000 cases, specifically Is there a timeline as far as a milestone of how we want to get these 4,000 cases to a more manageable amount?
Yes, and Mr. Vice Chair, I'll caveat that where I want to move everyone through the process quickly. Part of it is coordinating with the grantees to make sure they're ready for it. Some of these grantees, some of them require matching funds. Some of them are working through the process to get matching funds. Some of them are going through the process, they need to acquire a property, it takes time. Other ones may not necessarily be ready to move forward with the project right away, and it takes a little bit of time for them to get geared up to do that. So our goal is absolutely to be engaging with these grantees to be able to get them to a point where either we at least know where they are in the process to be able to get their grant funding, or we get them to a point where they can start to draw down on the funding right away. So our goal is, I want to be able to get to a much more proactive state in maybe the next couple of months to be able to sort of look at where we are and where we're more properly engaged to have more definitive timelines on some of these grants. The one things that we are doing proactively right now is we're looking at the grants that are looking to be expiring soon, and we're proactively going to be reaching out to grantees to make them aware that their grants will be expiring, in a year or two, and that way they are aware of it and they can start to engage to make sure that they if they need the funding still, that they can certainly engage to get the funding quickly.
Okay, great. Thank you very much, Mr. Secretary. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Vice Chair.
Use of energy performance contracts, also known as EPCs. The nice thing about these contracts is that they have the double benefit of saving money and at the same time also reducing energy consumption, as you know. In the DLS analysis, there's an exhibit on page 10, it's exhibit 5, that shows that in the last couple of years, there's been a dip in the use of these contracts, a dip in the actual energy savings, and also a dip of about $5 million from prior years. So I wanted to ask you if you could comment on why we're seeing that. What is DGS plan for the use of these EPCs going forward, and making sure that other agencies are also taking advantage of these savings in their facilities? Thank you.
Thank you, Delegate. Phenomenal question. I personally love EPCs. For a lot of the reasons you mentioned. You get a lot of new equipment at no cost, and the maintenance and repairs included in that. I've had experiences previously where I've had a 13-year EPC. In year 11, I had a boiler blow up on me, and it was repaired and replaced at no cost by the ESCO because it was part of the agreement. So it's a great benefit to the state. So I think one of the things, it's funny you mentioned it, I was talking with the team very recently about looking at the opportunity to make sure that we are looking at this as an avenue, not just a cost savings measure, but an opportunity to meet our climate solutions now goals as well, and to expedite and increase the number of EPCs we have across the state. It's a little involved to get an EPC going because you've got to engage with the energy conservation community and providers to be able to develop proposals. And once they do spend a lot of time doing that and generating that, then we've got to be able to do that cost benefit analysis to make sure it's worth the project, meaning there's enough cost savings there to do it. The benefit that we have now is that we're able to extend these EPCs over 30 years. Previously, the state was locked in at 13 years. Now we're at 25 years. We're at 30 years. We're seeing our projects teeter right around 25 years or so, which gives us that ability to extend going forward. So I think absolutely, Delegate, to your question, we will be looking at opportunities and avenues for additional EPCs. DGS is actually doing a more concerted, holistic review of state properties, and I call it the master plan of master plans. We're looking at across the board the entire state portfolio. What I mean by that is not just DGS or state-owned facilities, but state leases we have at commercial sites. Are we in the right locations? Are we spending the right capital maintenance dollars in the right places? Should we dump a bunch of money into an older building, or should we move people to modern commercial lease space? Doing more cost-benefit analysis to do that. As we do that, we'll certainly be mapping out and identifying more buildings which we will be keeping and which we need to invest in over time and do more of these EPCs. So I think we've got a couple I think we've got queued up that we're working on right now to be able to effectuate. but I certainly see us increasing these over time. And some of the experience I've had as delegate is we want to make sure we hold our ESCOs accountable. What I mean by that is I've done EPCs in the past where you cycle down in an office building, your air conditioning in the evenings and weekends makes total sense. All the energy providers do it, and it made total sense to us. As we did it, we learned that humidity does increase in the summer, and when you cycle down during those time periods, there's increased level in humidity, which may lead to mold projects in buildings as well. So how do we do that to make sure we effectuate the proper, and that's what we take a very close look at as we do these projects, make sure we get accurate savings without any type of compromise to our buildings.
Great.
Thank you.
Last question, Delegate Metzger.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
And Mr. Secretary, we do have to get out of here pretty quickly. We have DDA coming in, so just make the answer.
Short. Yeah,
Close
yes, sir.
succinct.
I'll make
Sure.
it pretty quick.
Sorry.
Mr. Vice Chair asked most of my questions, but let me ask you this question for the general conference in the room here. What kind of people apply for your grants?
So these are mainly nonprofit organizations, local governments. These are legislative bond initiatives that we manage. So they're approved by the legislature, but they're administered by the Department of General Services.
So what is the average amount of grant that you apply?
It'll depend on the project, sir, but we can get you the information we're providing. The Vice Chair, we're happy to provide you some of that information with maybe some more accurate averages.
You don't have a ballpark figure, 50,000, 10,000?
It really depends, sir. I've seen projects in the tens of thousands at 23,000 for a small project, an HVAC replacement. We've seen multi-million-dollar grants for large comprehensive renovations. So it really varies across the board depending on what the project is.
Okay. Well, since we're due time, I'll just eliminate mine.
Okay. Thank you, Delegate. Mr. Secretary, we trust that you'll make a lot of progress on these issues over the next year, and you'll be back to subcommittee next year. I hope we won't have to do another full next year.
Thank you, Mr.
Okay.
Chairman.
We're adjourned. Oh, we have one witness. 2 minutes for witnesses, Michael Gregory. Michelle. Is there Michelle Gregory? Okay, we're adjourned.